My name is Romaine Small with Faison. Welcome to Negotiate Like a Pro. I'm going to teach you over the next hour the art of negotiations. If you have never been to one of our workshops, again, this is sponsored by Grow with Google, and this is in partnership with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Epsilon Omega Chapter. Again, I want to welcome everyone on behalf of my president, Lois Knight Harrison, and also my vice president of program, Jan Wood Carter. Again, I'm going to walk you through how to negotiate. I'm going to walk you through a couple of things. I'm going to walk you through how to negotiate, when, what, why, and how to do this. You're going to understand why negotiation is necessary, the basic steps of when to use negotiation, and how to have confidence when you're doing this. You're also going to learn how to research certain situations before you start to do your organization. And finally, I'm going to give you some assignments that you can continue to practice on your negotiation skills. Before we get started, I just want to give some housekeeping. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, just like you indicated you couldn't hear me. Please put that into the chat. We are going to try as possible to make this interactive. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I think I'm going to start out by asking, has anybody tried to negotiate anything lately? If you could just drop that into the chat. That would be good. Okay, yes. Usually it is salaries and positions. So you're going to, if you haven't had any practice in this, you're going to learn now. All right. Negotiating with your children. Okay, that's probably the hardest thing to do, but yes. Okay. So let's get started. What does it actually mean when we say we want to negotiate? Negotiation is two or more people reaching an agreement on a topic of discussion, a contract, or a price. Usually one of those has the upper hand or the power in the discussion, and the other person is advocating for themselves to get a fair deal. Similar to if we're trying to buy a new car or, negotiate a price in something. Normally, if you're doing some consignment shopping, you can negotiate. Definitely, if you want to do a vehicle purchase, negotiation is that. Negotiation requires compromise, and someone might not get exactly what they want. But in the end, both people agree to a solution. But negotiation doesn't have to be hostile or one person leaving feeling some kind of way. The agreement that was reached should be an advantageous or to an advantage to everyone. So that's a lot of theory. So we should probably just kind of walk through this. What are some things you would negotiate? And again, we put those in the salary as well. The first thing people might think about when they hear the word negotiate is salary. So in the chat, we saw a lot of people talking about salary. For example, when interviewing for a new job, the hiring manager offers a salary to a candidate, and the candidate has to decide whether or not to ask for more money, if they're okay with what they're being offered, or do they think they deserve more? Then in turn, the hiring manager must decide whether, if they're going to be offering them more, or if there was a counter offer to offer more, if the additional cost to pay that individual is worth it. Does it make sense to them? So negotiating a salary for a new job is important, but there's a lot of other things that may require negotiation. And here's some things you might want to negotiate. The hourly rate for a new job, an increase in salary or hourly rate for an existing job, saying, I would like to have a raise when that raise hasn't been offered yet. You want to say you need a raise now. Or other terms of a job offer like vacation, sick time, flexible hours, remote working. And that is really important in today's society because a lot of people are really looking for remote working. A sign-in bonus. reimbursement for expenses like college tuition, childcare, relocation, commuting, etc. So some personal negotiations include, and we just had this in the chat, the price of a major purchase like a house or a car, or a fee for a service you need or service you provide, like those who charge general contracting fees or freelance work or designers, mechanics, lawyers. So those fees may be negotiated. Finally, some smaller contracts you might have not known you could negotiate include things like your credit card interest rate, your rent. Of course, you can negotiate smaller purchases like a secondhand dresser. I think I just said that earlier, or a monthly fee to your gym membership. But basically, everything is negotiable. So we're going to talk about many different situations during this workshop. But notice that negotiation isn't always about money. It's also about time, benefits, quality of life. And I will tell you, for instance, now they're considering this particular time post-COVID would be the Great Resignation. So a lot of people, a lot of employees or people looking for jobs kind of have the upper hand and a different mindset of coming in to negotiate things that they want, like, again, remote working, different quality of life, a balance of life. So with that, keep in mind as you go into any situation where you need to advocate for yourself, for example, salary negotiations, there may be some extenuating circumstances for why a potential employee can't meet your request, like strict pay bans or budgetary limits. But they may be flexible on other terms like working from home, flexible hours, retirement benefits. These concepts apply to all situations too. Maybe your gym can throw in a free massage or a monthly smoothie, even if they can't offer you a better monthly rate. So again, negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. Your next question might be, why should I negotiate? So negotiations can be uncomfortable conversations, and even with the basic tactics, you may not want to ask for anything, but they're still really important to attempt. The obvious reason for salary negotiations is if you're negotiating a higher salary, you'll get more money. But if you don't, you can never get what you don't ask for. It's not just about a particular job. According to the research that was done at Carnegie Mellon University, people who don't negotiate their first job earn 1 to 1.5 million in total less than they could over the span of their career. That's an incredible deficit. So think about this. If you are, the research is saying that if you did not negotiate over the span of your lifetime, if you're working for the next 40, 50 years, you could have short sold yourself at least $1.5 million. Why in that case? Because when you get promoted in your job later, or even move to a new company, your first salary sets the standard that your next salary is measured against. In some states, employees aren't allowed to ask what your current salary is before they offer you a job, but many do. Plus, your first salary is a mental benchmark for you specifically. If a hiring manager asks you what salary you're looking for, you might state a lower amount if you're accustomed to getting paid less. The great thing about negotiating a salary at a new job, though, it is an opportunity for you to immediately increase your earning potential now and for the future. If you've done your research, which we'll talk about more later in here, you'll have the information you need to ask for the right number. Furthermore, hiring managers expect people to negotiate. So they generally offer a smaller number up front so that there's room and wiggle room to move that number. Keep in mind, there's a reason they're offering you a job in the first place. They want you to work there. If you don't ask for more, You could be leaving money on the table that they were willing to give you anyway. There are other reasons to negotiate. Persuasive skills are often cited by companies as important attributes in employees. So being comfortable with negotiation can make you more attractive as a job candidate as well. A sales manager might need to negotiate contracts, and an event planner may need to negotiate the cost for running a venue. So again, keep in mind that negotiation could help you in your next job. Is there any questions before we continue to move forward? Okay. I'm checking the chat and I'm going to keep going. So again, there are 4 steps in negotiating. Step 1 is to do your research. The best way to be prepared going into negotiations is to research ahead of time. For example, if you're going to negotiate a starting salary at a new job, you need to know what other people in that role are paid or what the average is. So you have a baseline number in mind. You can find this information in various ways. Of course, you can start by searching online. You can find salary data provided by HR managers from employees who anonymously post their salaries on websites like Glassdoor, Salary.com, Indeed, and PayScale. Or just check the website for the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can even search job information on Google.com by typing a jobs near me or jobs with X salary into the search bar. You can learn more tips like this for searching your jobs through g.co/grow-on-air. And these are other webinars that we offer as well. Again, use your job title, location, experience, and any special skills you have to narrow the search. This will help you get an idea of a salary range. So again, I think someone actually put in the chat earlier that we, negotiate looking for a house. We're going to negotiate that price for the most part. I know that now this is a seller's market, but in a buyer's market, you should be able to negotiate the price of the house you're going to buy. You should consider your job search as big as the house that you're purchasing as well. You can also ask others in that field. Perhaps you have a friend or a colleague, but know that for many people, discussing salaries is uncomfortable. Asking for a range could take some of the pressure off. So finally, make sure your roles are comparable when you're doing your search. Your experience and your educational background is important here too. If you have 6 years of experience and you're comparing yourself to someone who had a role that had 12 years experience, you might be bringing different skills to a potential employer. So the pay might be different. So make sure you're looking for comparable jobs. If you're looking for a new apartment and you want to negotiate the rental price, find out what comparable apartments are going for in your area. For this information on real estate websites, you can find this information on real estate websites or by talking to listing agents or property management companies or by asking friends. A referral is one of the best things to an apartment. Once you have a salary or rental price in mind, figure out what you want to ask for now. Your step 2 is going to be to clarify your goal. What do you want out of this negotiation? Do you want a raise? Do you want a new job title? Do you want a better price? When you've determined exactly what you're negotiating for, it's easier to focus on the actual process. Okay, great advice. It was put in the chat that when someone was searching for a job, they conducted a lot of informal interviews to get an idea of the opportunities and the salary. So yes, what a great way to negotiate and a way to start your negotiation by doing your research. So, number 1, what's the best possible outcome? In other words, What's your ideal salary or rent or monthly fee based on the research you've done? Remember that this should be an obtainable base on the numbers you found online or heard from your colleagues. Number 2, what's your bottom line? What is the lowest amount you'll accept for this job or the highest amount you'll pay for your rent? Keep this number to yourself, but have it in the back of your mind on the process. Your bottom line should be an amount you'll be happy with, not one that will make you feel resentful. Use your own expenses as your guide. You don't want to agree to a number that will force you to look for another job with a better salary in 6 months. Make sure the number fits into your personal budget. And number 3, what is your backup plan? In other words, if you don't get what you want, what will you ask for or do instead? Let's say you want to negotiate your salary, but the hiring manager says there's nothing that really he can do based on your title and level of experience. And they're acting like they have a strict salary band. As long as this is a number you can live with, what's something else you might consider asking for? So again, it's not all about the money. Sometimes if you can't get to the money number, maybe it's something else that you're interested in, like working from home a couple days a week. Again, we discussed it earlier, getting some tuition reimbursement, help with childcare. So I'm going to give you a couple of options for your backup plan. 1, ask for add-ons. This is exactly what we just said. What is something else that will improve your quality of life? For a job, you might want more vacation time. This is a perfect, reasonable thing to negotiate if they hold firm on the salary. Or 1 day per week, you get to work from home. This is exactly what we were just talking about. If that is possible in your industry. There's also tuition reimbursement, childcare expenses, commuting costs, retirement matching like 401k, a signing bonus, and more. But don't try to ask for everything at once. That's why you create a backup plan ahead of time. Be sure to come prepared, knowing all the things you want, and think about what your must-haves are from that list. Consider what is most important to you after your best possible outcome. For a new apartment with a non-negotiable rent, maybe you can ask the landlord to throw in some free internet service or access to the gym for free. Something else you can consider asking for is a contingency. If you're asking for a raise at your current job, your manager might want to tie it into a specific performance. In other words, if I achieve this goal, can I get this reward? For example, you might need to acquire a certain number of clients and reach a sales goal, or meet another benchmark that makes sense for the company, and then ask your manager to reevaluate. At a new job, they may be willing to let you work from home 1 day per week after you've been employed for a year, so they can evaluate your productivity first. Productivity first. Well, I'm struggling with that. You want to decide whether this is an acceptable outcome for you. Similarly, maybe a new landlord will agree to you getting a dog after you paid rent for being on time for 6 months without paying any extra costs. And then if you don't get what you want, whether it's your ideal salary or a flexible schedule, understand that you need to be able or be willing to walk away. I can't reiterate that enough. You want to be willing to even walk away. Great job, Kiva. I see in the chat you indicated that you negotiated your schedule. You weren't able to get what you wanted by way of pay rate, but you negotiated in your schedule. So that's great. Once you have your goal in mind, you can move to what we call step 3. Emphasize the benefit to them. In this step, instead of focusing on what makes you a unique candidate, you want to describe how the other person will benefit. For example, if you are negotiating the rent on new apartments, you might want to tell the landlord how, as an employee professional, you always pay your rent on time. Or maybe you're less likely to move out after the first year because you're settled in the area and have ties, which would save the landlord the headache of having to clean the apartment, release the apartment again in the next year. In other words, demonstrate that this is a win-win for everyone. You both will be better off if you can come to a compromise on agreement. Another example is, say you're asking your boss if you can start working from home part-time. Instead of explaining that you want the flexibility to pick up your kids from school at the end of the day, emphasize how much more productive you are from home, at a home office, where your coworkers can't drop by for a chat at any time. Make it clear that if you're given this benefit, you'll produce better work for the team and the company overall. The same goes for a lease or securing a contract on a service. Perhaps if your contractor can agree to slightly better the deal on a project, you'll hire him again for the future. I'll give an example for myself because I'm actually, in addition to doing this, I actually run a mall. So one of the negotiation tactics that I use by way of a better price would be, we have quite a few malls in the area. So I normally negotiate the conversation by saying, if you do really well with us and give us a great price, I will refer you to all our other malls in the area who will possibly use you. And a lot of times that actually works. You may need to do a little research to find out how the negotiation will benefit the other person. You might need to track your time for a couple of days in and out of the office if you're negotiating a work from home privilege. Or you might need to figure out who else might be competing with you for an apartment and what you can do to become the better tenant, how you can make yourself look better in a better light as the better tenant. And again, the 4th point would be support your points with data. Your research on typical salaries in the area should give you enough data to support your salary requests and negotiations, but you might want to include other data like value you add. For example, increase subscriber retention by 50%, acquired 3 new clients every month over the last year, or you wrote an additional 2,000 words on a day you've worked from home. If you have a detailed resume, you may have these statistics already. As another example, if you're looking to purchase a house, you can provide the owner with a letter showing that you are pre-approved for a mortgage and you can afford it. This way, when you put your offer in, it tells the seller that you're likely to be able to go to closing and close on that house quickly, and it gives them a little bit more peace of mind. So let's finish this by discussing some biases and how it works against you. Implicit bias can affect you during negotiation process in a lot of ways. Implicit bias is the prejudice that someone has, but that they're not aware of. We'll talk mostly about biases in salary negotiations, but that's where the studies have been done. But biases can be presented in any type of negotiation. Let's get started with one bias, which is gender bias. So gender bias, a commonly repeated statistics, is that women earn less than men as a whole because they don't negotiate their job offers. But why? Because stereotypically, women are perceived as disliking confrontation. This may be true to the extent, but it's more systematic than that. Research has shown hiring managers, both male and female, expect men to negotiate, but dislike it when women do it because women negotiates are seen as aggressive. For more insight on hiring and racial bias, So this actually even, not only do you have gender bias, but now this kind of happens as a racial bias. There isn't as much research into the pay disparity for people of color as there is for women in the workplace. But overall, there's a pay gap between Black and white employees. A series of studies from MIT showed that hiring managers expected Black applicants to negotiate less than white applicants. But after the interview process, the managers reported that Black job seekers negotiated more, despite white candidates negotiating equally. The Black job seeker ended up with a lower starting salary because they were perceived as pushier. So that's a racial bias. Of course, these aren't the only forms of bias. Some people can demonstrate prejudices against others for their disabilities, sexual orientation, religion, and a number of other factors. I know, right? Wow. So again, if you're a woman, a person of color, or a member of one of the minority groups, how do you prepare for this kind of situation? So let's think about this. And maybe we can kind of drop some things in the chat before we do this, before we move on to what it actually is. If you're one of these people, a woman, a person of color, a member of one of the minority groups, how would you prepare? Because that means that people are going to see you, as soon as they come in the door, they're going to already have a bias about you. So how would you prepare? Drop some things in the chat. Being confident is right. Talk about the experience from my own people. Yes. Yes, yes. I'll give one example though. If for some reason you are a person that gets into a job and you have a disability that isn't clearly seeable for them, for someone who suffers from ADHD or some kind of disability, make sure that when you do finally get in the company, you make sure you put that into your file somewhere so that doesn't come back on you. Again, know your data. Yep, absolutely. So first, again, realize it's not your fault. The best way to avoid this type of bias is to seek out companies that publicize equitable hiring processes. During your application stage, check whether the company is an equal opportunity employer or an employee that pledges not to discriminate against workers for their race, their color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, gender identity, and sexual orientation, national origin, or age, 40 or older, or disability, or genetic information. By law, these companies can ask you your personal questions, like whether you have children during the interview process, including the negotiation stage. If an employer asks an outright biased question or makes you feel uncomfortable for any reason, it's a definite sign that you should walk away from the conversation, whether or not you can negotiate it or not. Another way to avoid company with biased hiring practices is to network with colleagues with similar roles. That way, you'll better understand the company's culture and the way management treats their employees, including their salary ranges. Again, the onus should not be on you to change or meet the narrow expectation of this new job you're trying to get into. If at any time you feel discriminated against, you should leave the meeting, and you can also file a claim with the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So again, I will say one of the things I really like about LinkedIn, if you're not already on LinkedIn, one of the things I really like about LinkedIn is you get to see how many connections you have with certain companies. And when you do that, you get to really go to some people that you have connections with to see you work for this company or you used to work for this company. How do they treat their employees? So many things have changed, over the last 20, 30 years. There's so much information out there to help you get a better job or a job that's for a best fit for you. So the best way to improve your negotiation skills is to practice. So that's what you're going to do now. It's your turn to prepare to negotiate. And no, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm just going to walk you through some things to prepare to negotiate. So first, let's answer the question, when do you negotiate? Choose the right time. We've talked about negotiating salaries, but when does that happen? It's not wise to try to negotiate your salary during the first interview with the company, unless the hiring manager brings it up. Wait until they've offered you a job before you start to talk salary. Don't wait too long either. If you've already signed a contract, it's usually too late. Choose the right opportunity. Keep in mind, not every job offer or rental agreement is meant to be negotiated. For example, some companies hire a group right out of college and pay them the same salary. In real estate, some years a buyer's market and some years are a seller's market. We just talked about that. So again, it would not be a good time in this particular market because it is a seller's market now to go in and try to negotiate, especially now when people are offering more than the houses are worth. Well, and I won't say worth, they're going way over the asking price of the house. So it's not really about what it's worth, but people are really in competition for homes. So if you're trying to buy a home at a time where there's a ton of houses for sale, you'll probably have good luck negotiating. If there is only one house available in a great neighborhood, it will probably sell quickly. So in that case, you probably don't have the upper hand and it won't benefit you to negotiate. So remember, your goal is to buy a house in this situation. So you may need to make some compromises. Okay. Finally, make the effort worth the payoff. You want to be respectful of the person you're negotiating with. When it comes to negotiating with a small business that might be struggling because of the pandemic, use your best judgment. Don't haggle just for the sake of it. Be sure you're asking for something you genuinely want. Now let's practice negotiating. First, decide what you want to negotiate. Pick something that has a slightly higher stake or is important to you, like renting a new apartment, buying a car, asking for a raise at your current job. The examples I'm going to use are about a new job offer, but feel free to substitute the information that makes sense for you. Here's a scenario. Imagine you've been offered a job at a new company with a slightly better title than what you currently have. You schedule to meet with the HR to discuss the terms, including the salary and benefits. How do you prepare to negotiate this situation? So write down, you got a job that's been offered to you. It has a better title. You're going to discuss with HR and then try to figure out, like, how do you prepare for this negotiating? Drop some things in the chat. How would you prepare for this negotiation? So I'm just going to say, to prepare for the negotiation, I think we talked about first, you want to do your research. Compiling ahead of time will help you frame your conversation and give you data you need to make your case. So you want to research first. I'm going to create my negotiation plan. You're going to create it on anything you want. Again, with this being a Grow with Google, we always recommend that you use Google Docs. But you can also put this in any kind of Word application that you want, or put it on a piece of paper. But again, one benefit of putting your negotiation plan on a digital document is that you can always access it from anywhere, any device. If you're using Google Docs, you can access it from your phone, your computer, and anywhere in minutes. Okay, that's Viola, that's great. Yes, you would definitely want to ask questions. But again, first, you want to make sure that you research so you know that the questions that you're asking are viable questions. Again, doing your research, you don't want to, kind of ask if the company is just experiencing or just laid off a bunch of people and now they're just starting to rehire. So you want to do your research and make sure you're asking all of the right questions. So again, if you were going to do this in your Google Docs, you would just start in Google Docs, start with a blank document, and then start typing in your browser. So if you're familiar with it, it's showing you how you're going to put this document in a Google Docs. You don't have to do it in Google Docs. You can do it in anything that you want. Record key details. For a salary negotiation, include information about you and your current job, like your title, location, years of experience, level of education, and the company size. Include your current salary. Then record your related accomplishments. Include everything that demonstrates that you make a difference to that team at that new company. And what is unique about you? What is your unique value? Okay, Winona, I think that's great. I think that you should just add, I think when you're asking about the company's maternity leave policy, you might want to just ask about all of their policies, because you don't want to lead them to think that, you don't want them to create a bias, like maybe they may think you're pregnant now because you're just asking about maternity leave. You might just want to ask about what are all your policies. So again, what's your unique value? Use bullet points to organize your notes. If you're not negotiating a job, think about the information you need to record from your scenario. For example, if you're negotiating the price for a used car, do your research on the value of the vehicle based on its make and model, the year it was manufactured, and how many miles it has on it. Next, you can open the Google.search. Start by searching typical salaries for the title you're aiming for. Here's a tip. Use some keywords like sales manager, in Chicago, college graduate, mid-level, to kind of narrow your search. Or go directly to a specific website like Glassdoor or PayScale to use their filters. Note, you may have to register or provide geographic information to search their data. Next, add a new header to your document for research about a potential job offer or other situations you're preparing for. Then fill in the details you find online. Record the average salary for the position based on your research, plus any other typical benefits you want to include. For instance, maybe you notice a lot of companies are offering sign-in bonuses or paid parental leave. Add those perks to your list. If you're watching this video, or you're not watching the video, talking to me, we can just pause right here so that everybody can catch up. Because again, I want you to write down some things that you would ask for it. I think we're already putting them in the chat. So we'll give a few minutes for people to do that. And I'm just going to read some of the responses. That's a great example, Viola. I like that. It should be a win-win for everyone. Find a win in anything. Now that you've done your baseline research, you can record your goals. Remember, there are 3 categories: the ideal or goal offer, the bottom line, and the backup or contingency plan. Okay, so here's what it's going to look like for a salary negotiation. For your goal offer, put the highest salary you think is plausible, but be realistic. If the average you're seeing in the industry is $55,000, expecting to get an offer of $85,000, it's just going to set you up for disappointment. Then type in your bottom line offer. What's the absolute least that you will accept, with all things being equal? Your benefits and contingencies will likely affect this number somewhat, but it's okay to have a minimum requirement. You don't need to undersell yourself or your abilities. And finally, the backup plan. This is where you'll record everything that you will accept as an alternative to your dream salary. Start bulleting a list, then type anything that comes to mind, including extra paid time off, any extra upgraded bonus structure, reimbursement for your commuting expenses, like train tickets, gas, remote working options, a better title, or a flexible schedule. Remember, these contingencies are about your quality of life and work-life balance. Think of benefits that will make your life better, but don't cost the company as much as an increased salary would, or expenses that come out of a different budget or department. So again, before we move on, I'm just going to say, great time to negotiate is once you've been offered a position. That means that they are interested enough in you to offer you a position at a certain salary. At that point, you should have already done your research. You should already know what your bottom line is, and you already know what your backup contingency plan is, because you've already got this in your mind, so this conversation flows. You don't want to get off the phone with them. You want to talk it all out immediately. You don't want to go back and say, well, let me think about it, which you can think about it, and you can come back with it, but you want to have this readily available to have the conversation. Whichever negotiation scenario you've chosen, put your goal offer in bold type to emphasize it. So again, put as much stuff down so you can see it. If you can visualize it, you will know what you're reaching for. Then highlight the two most important points in your backup plan so you can focus on your negotiation. If these requests are standard with the offer or are met already, you can move on to something else on your list. If there's something that you frequently see listed in job postings as benefits, but are not important to you, consider listing these as well. Then strike through them if you don't need them. Depending on the company, you might be able to trade tuition reimbursement for regular travel to an industry conference, for example. If you're not in school, say, well, I want to learn and go to a conference. To find this document in the future, again, it's a great way to put it in somewhere that you can just keep accessing it so you don't have to write it down. But again, we're going to always promote Google, like the Google account or the Google Drive. These are all free. And your research document will be saved automatically, and it could be found at a drop of a dime. So we've gotten a lot of information, but now you want to prepare mentally for the conversation. You have your research, so you're ready to go into a negotiation, prepared to ask for a specific salary, rent, or price, and defend your choice. But negotiation isn't just about numbers, of course. It's about a mental game. Many people, even those who know exactly what goal they want to meet, find negotiation nerve-wracking. That's why a lot of people try to avoid it, but that's going to be a mistake for you. Just as you can prepare for your conversation with that data, you can mentally prepare for it too. And you can do that by following these steps. So 1, listen to your talking points. The research you prepared will go a long way in your discussion, but you will need other talking points too. Consider writing a loose script to begin a negotiation with. It doesn't need to be something you memorize or you have to bring to the meeting, but an outline of what you'll say with some exact phrasing will likely help you feel more comfortable when your meeting begins. In a few minutes, we could do some role playing, which we probably can't do this in this way, but you might want to actually take that role playing to, if you're home with someone, role play that conversation and feel it out and see how it feels as you're talking it out. Sometimes when you talk it out, you may say things differently. Again, you want to recognize the worst case scenario. It's okay to be a little uncomfortable with the negotiation process, but consider this. What is the worst that could happen? The worst case scenario for people would be the hiring manager rescinds their offers or laugh you out the room, which I hope that doesn't happen. That's always possible, but it's unlikely, especially if your offer is grounded in research. Remember, the offer They offered you a position for a reason, and we've already talked about that. They like you. They think you're valuable. So you just have to sell it. So unless you're on completely different pages when it comes to salary and benefits, they'll probably want to reach an agreement with you. And again, I will say this, although this is the great, what they consider the great resignation time frame of people just leaving their jobs, keep in mind, there are people who do want to work, and they are a bunch of jobs available. And this would be a great time because people want people to work. So I would just practice. If I was looking for a new job, first of all, you have an abundance of jobs out there. Practice on those interviews. And the worst thing that can happen is someone says no. And rejection is not bad. Rejection only moves you to something else. So last with 3, identify your nervous habits. When were you uncomfortable? We often change our body language or voices. Think about what you do when you're nervous, like tapping your pen, picking your nails, speaking extra fast. Write yourself an encouraging note to remember to breathe and slow down. And remember to do it during negotiation, or bring a notebook to occupy your time and draw some pictures in it. If you forget words, don't ramble, just stop. Stop. There's nothing wrong with taking a breath. If your nervous action is shaking, I would say put something in your lap, hold your hands close together, like together at your legs, and just grasp them. You don't want to come across as nervous because, again, it's almost like we're playing poker. You don't want them to see you sweat. You don't want to show that you are nervous, because most people will be, HR people especially, they know what to look for. So you want to practice this. Talk it out. Talk it out with someone. Talk it out with someone and make sure that, you work through your nervous things that cause you issues before you get there. Absolutely. Again, it always helps to take a deep breath and just restart. So you've prepared your research, and now your mental game is on. Now it's time to negotiate. So let's go through like what the real conversation would be step by step. And you all are giving great advice to each other, and this is what we want, because someone may not have thought of something. So continue this dialogue in the chat, because you're giving great advice. So before you go into the meeting or start that phone call, take a moment to collect yourself. So you just talked about this. Take a moment to collect yourself. There's been a lot of research around how body language can affect your confidence. Before you negotiate, try breaking into a power pose. Stand straight up, put your hands on your hips, hold your chest high, take a couple of deep breaths. Feeling powerful in the moment before negotiation can be a mental encouragement. And it could be just what you need to get through that tough conversation. And again, it can't hurt to try. Then demonstrate confidence when you're in the meeting too. Be aware of your body language. Sit up straight, make eye contact. You want to convey confidence, but you don't want the other person to feel attacked. So that's a fine line. You don't want to be cocky, but you do want to display confidence. And this is true when you're negotiating over the phone. Nervousness and discomfort can be heard in your voices. When you start talking, so you want to be confident as well. Then have a conversation, starting by first saying, thank you for the offer or the opportunity. Make small talk. If it makes sense in that situation, then reiterate your interests in the focus of your negotiation. For example, if you're negotiating a salary, start by thanking the HR manager for the job offer. Next, if you're feeling edgy or nervous, make a little small talk, especially if you've never met that other person. A friendly chat can help establish some goodwill, diffuse your nerves. You might ask about a person's weekend or comment about the weather. It may seem silly, but showing genuine interest in a person builds a connection. Then reiterate how much you like to join that team. You want them to know that you're genuinely excited about the job and you want to research and agree and come to some kind of agreement so that we all can get everyone into this job. You in the job, them getting you trained. Remember, this might be your future boss or HR manager. So you want to make a good impression. Finally, be clear about what you want. If they emailed you a salary number ahead of time, then you know that going into the conversation, what you want to ask for next. If they've only expressed interest in hiring you without giving you a number, let them just take the lead. So I'll give an example for me. When I was years ago, probably 12 years ago, when I negotiated a job, I was actually in a position in the actual department, and it was for a promotion. And the salary that they offered me was clearly not what I know my counterparts in that position was making, nor was it anything that I was interested. So I thanked them for the offer. I told them that I would continue to be a team player for whoever they hired. However, because I was going to be taking on this new role, it would be more time for me staying at the job. I would be putting more time into it. And that salary would just not be, I wasn't comfortable with that salary. And lo and behold, they came back with a salary very close to what I was looking for. So again, I was willing to stay in the position I was already in. I offered the good faith because again, this was going to be still my company. I was still working there. I didn't want them to think that I was upset about it, but I would continue to help the new person they brought in, but I wasn't going to take that job for what they were offering. And that's confidence. It was humble, but confident. So now take a moment to consider the offer, which I did. Once they made the offer and told you the salary, give yourself some time to think about it. Breathe deeply as you consider the offer and compare it to the research and the bottom line that you constructed earlier. It's a big decision that you really don't need to make quickly. Then encourage them to speak first. You'll need a second to think about your next steps at that point, but staying silent can sometimes lead the other person to make an offer to avoid uncomfortable feelings. Silence always keeps you from seeming too eager to make an agreement. If they make an offer that doesn't match your ideal number, you might pause and say something like, that wasn't what I was expecting based on my research. On the other hand, if they ask you what salary you were looking for, it's fine to respond with a question. Well, what do you have budgeted for this position? This might feel scary or uncomfortable, but the person you're negotiating with probably has a best offer in mind too. Encourage them to say it. Next, use your natural language. Don't accuse anyone of trying to underpay or offend you. Demonstrate the value that you bring. Don't focus on what you think you deserve. Keep your language neutral, not accusatory. Unless the hiring manager says something overly sexist or racist, remain polite throughout the conversation. This is true when you're negotiating with a customer service agent or a potential landlord as well. It's easy to become defensive when they think you're being overcharged or underpaid, but recognize they're doing their job to meet their budget or work with constraints beyond their control. You can still advocate for yourself while remaining cordial. And I would just go back to say you get more bees with honey. So you don't want to be the adversary and then somebody becomes defensive and we never get to the negotiation or the compromise we're looking for. So the scene you just heard about was pretty much the ideal outcome, but of course, that's not always how it works out. In negotiation, there might be a time where you need to use your backup plan. If their first offer is firm, come back with your contingencies and see what else you can get. So again, if you're not getting anything by way of salary, again, be polite and say, well, will you consider? And then figure out what your contingencies were. Well, will you consider if you're not offering this, then maybe you can pay me for working home a couple days because that salary included my travel from work, from here to work. And now I can work from home. So it says, what do you think would make a good backup plan for the situation? So use the chat and say, if in fact you wasn't able to get the salary you wanted, what would be a good backup plan for you? What are some things that you would be looking for? And you can just drop those in the chat. Remote work, yes. Extra perks, great benefit package. Telework, yep. That's going to be the big thing. Yep, work-life balance, vacation bonuses, absolutely. Absolutely. Retirement, childcare reimbursement, yep. Sick days of benefit, yeah, exactly. So finally, mentally prepare yourself for the idea that you may need to decline the offer or walk away. You got to know when to fold them. So again, Kenny Rogers, this song could never be so true. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. That's why you come up with a bottom line earlier in your research process. If the company can't meet your minimum demands for whatever reason, it's okay to find something that works better for you. For example, if the salary or that the company is offering won't cover your childcare or rent, then they may not be a good option for you. The same goes for an apartment that you're renting or a monthly fee for a service. If the cost is out of your budget, you don't need to put yourself into a financial hardship. So remember this, even when it comes to buying cars, I know that new shiny car or new shiny used car is great, but don't let it put you in a financial budget because you've never got to the place you need to get to and you're paying 22, 30% interest on it. It's okay to look elsewhere for a job, an apartment, a car, even that the realization is profoundly disappointing. You don't want to put yourself in a position that doesn't work for you. Please remember that every decision and situation is personal. So you need to know what the needs are of you and what's best for you. So let's take a second to recap. So we did our research. We clarified our goal, including the ideal number, the bottom line, and our backup plan. We emphasized the benefit to all of them. And then we got supporting points for our data. So congratulations if you've done all of that because you are working your way through negotiation. And some key phrases you might want to use in your conversation is, and I just used it again, are you willing to discuss benefits or any other related subjects instead? Because of my experience in education, that wasn't what I was expecting based on my research. What is your policy on? And I really appreciate you working with me. So remain polite. So now that you have the tools to negotiate a major milestone like a job offer, it's time to practice your skills in the real world. But you don't need to go to a job interview to learn to negotiate in real life. So your assignment after this workshop is really small. Pick a low stakes situation like a sales price on a pair of shoes, used furniture, or gym membership, or anything else where you think the price is flexible. Then negotiate the price so you can practice all the steps we just discussed in this workshop. The way you get comfortable negotiating when a situation isn't emotionally an issue for you, then you end up having to walk away from a conversation. It's not going to be a big deal for you because you've actually practiced it. Hopefully, you'll get the experience for the best possible outcome, getting exactly what you want. But if you experience the worst case scenario or have to cancel your cable subscription, if that is what you're negotiating, it's not going to let it not affect your life in a significant way. So don't go home and try to negotiate something with your husband and you end up getting a divorce over it because that's not what this is That's not what it's designed for. We want you to go and practice some things that's not going to be a big deal if you don't get it. We just want you to get some practice in it. So you'll get to try out the negotiation process, but without any huge repercussions or getting fired from a job. So let's get started. List a few potential situations to negotiate. You want to write a script, make the call. In the comments, you might want to tell me what you're planning to do first. After the conversation is over, reflect on the experience. And again, this is just practice for you. This kind of walks you through a live, because a lot of these are done live where people are together, and then you would have actually done it. But again, when you go home, consider writing down what you want to negotiate. Again, write the script. You want to plan it out. And then when you're finished, figure out what were you most proudest of in that negotiation? What could you have done better? And what kind of surprised you? Then again, continue to do it all over again. Try, because practice is going to make it better for you, and you have to have that conversation, and it's a real situation. So, as a recap, during this workshop, we went through some common steps for successful negotiation. Do your research, clarify your goals, emphasize the benefit to them, and support your points with data. You learn how to prepare mentally so you'll have the confidence for the conversation. You create a document, whether you put it in a Google Docs or you put it in a Word document, or if you put it on a piece of paper. You know how to put these potential situations down that you want to negotiate. You want to actually include your goal on that, the number you want to get to, your backup plan, and your talking points. You've learned a lot about bias in negotiation. So keep in mind some of the answers. I think I gave an answer earlier today in reference to asking about a specific policy. You don't want to create a bias. You don't want people to think, if they already think that women or African-American individuals who negotiate are a little aggressive, make sure you're coming across very, very neutral. And finally, you received the assignment. I just gave you the assignment on how to practice and negotiate in the real world. So hopefully this was great for you today. I want to thank you so much for joining this workshop. I hope you enjoyed it, and good luck on your negotiations. Everyone who registered for this, I am actually going to send you the actual PowerPoint presentation. You will also get a survey. Please fill out the survey, because we don't know how much, we need to help you, what you're looking for, what you can have, what you would like to see, what didn't work for you. So please, the survey is important to us. And again, if you are interested in seeing any more of these, because we do offer them a couple times a month, please go onto our link tree, and I will put that information into the email that I send you as well. So again, I try to get you just to focus on the actual PowerPoint, and I actually come off of Zoom, but I was going to try to come back on, but I'm having difficulties. Let me see. All right, I'm back. So for everyone, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I always say this in my Jay-Z voice. You could have been anywhere else, but you decided to be here with us today. Thank you again, and we look forward to servicing you in the future. Happy negotiating.